just do it and you'll find your way. And if you don't have a great idea, just start somewhere. And any fragment of a sample will inspire you to do something else.
I have a follow-up question. We spoke about this a couple weeks ago, and I loved your answer, so I want to ask you again.
Oh, I'm gonna mess it up.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
No. You just have to sit down and do the damn thing. And this is why you practice. This is why you teach yourself, constantly improve, because when you do have a moment to sit down and do the work, you cannot stall. You cannot wait for the muse to descend from the sky. Sitting and finding gratitude to be able to do this is an important process of like not letting it get suffocated.
Hi, and welcome back to Quest Markers. On this show, we talk about video games and the people behind them. I'm Marina. I make music and sounds for video games. And today I am so excited to have Cody Matthew Johnson with us. Cody is a composer, a songwriter, and a music producer who has worked on titles such as Resident Evil 2, Bayonetta 3, Devil May Cry 5, and most recently, Star Wars Outlaws. He's also the co-founder, CEO, and creative director of Imperia Group, an audio and music company. And today, we'll be focusing the conversation on making music for games, and I'm so excited to wrap up the year with this episode. As always, the episode will be timestamped with the topics we cover, so feel free to jump around. And let's get into it. Cody.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Before we dive in, how are you staying hydrated? What are you drinking?
Those are two very different questions, though. Staying hydrated,
they are.
Things you're drinking, they seem like they could be related, but if you do one without the other, you might be in for a bad time. We have water, we have Hydration Nation, but then we have the holiest of holy coffees as well. A cute little mug too for my grandma.
I do like the mug. Yeah.
I bring it with me wherever I go. Not really. I mean, I've had it with me for a long time. But yes, two beverages, both alike in unity in fair Los Angeles, where we lay our scene. Something about Romeo and Juliet. Anyways, I'll stop. I'll stop talking. I'll pass it back to you.
I love it. We did this completely unintentionally, but I also have water and coffee.
Yeah, but you're like it's in this blender bottle.
I don't know why.
No thermos, black on black. You're like, and outfit murdered out, like panels murdered out. I'm over here with like my cute, I don't even know what.
I love the mug. What's wrong with the mug? I really like the mug.
I don't know. I feel like normally
the mug.
My brand is black on black, and now I feel like a loss of sense of identity, you know? But
no.
The coffee is black, if that counts for anything.
That does count. That does count. We're both dual wielding. I love it. Cody, before we get into your path into the games industry, could you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I think you did a great job kicking it off. In terms of who I am as a person, you know, it's like I like the extremity of all things in life. I like sort of high action athletics and sports, snowboarding, skiing, fast walks on the beach, and fast walks, short walks on long walks. What is it? Slow walks on the beach. But no, yeah, I got started into music when I was a kid. Did a lot of different stuff growing up, between like being in bands. I was a classical musician. I played trumpet and trombone and French horn, tuba, things like that. I got into being in bands and producing music, and basically anything I could get my hands on in my tiny little, you know, sort of podunk country town I grew up in. And that just ended up being like this great sort of amalgamation of skills that lent itself to doing media music when I ended up there. When I first moved to LA, I was in bands, and I was a singer-songwriter, and I was producing for bands and other artists. And I found myself just gravitating towards the creative work where I could just immerse myself in a singular thing and collaborate with people remotely and just, you know, have longer writing sessions. And I found kind of the marriage of art forms in visual media to be like very similar to working with an artist, where you're trying to extract emotion out of them while you're producing them, and then like in the studio, and then when you go and do your pass as a producer, you're enhancing that vision. And I think it's a very similar skill set to working in games. And then I end up working on a lot of songs in games too. So I'm not only fusing kind of those worlds together, but I'm also fusing the skill sets together, which has been great. It's been really fun and interesting. Didn't mean to end up in video games. I think a lot of people just kind of end up here in like a roundabout, fun and interesting way, but I know that's changing a lot too. I know a lot of people are sort of very focused on being a video game composer, being a game developer, rather than just ending up here. And I think that spirit of sort of just going where creativity leads you. Um, at least for me, that's worked out really, really well, and it's been very rewarding.
Actually, before I ask you a little bit more about your path getting
Yeah.
into games, which you've already started talking about,
Yeah.
uh, I feel like from the outside looking in, it's confusing to folks who aren't in music what the difference is between being a composer, being a songwriter, and being a music producer. And obviously, there's a lot more roles we could talk about, but would you like to take a stab at a definition for all of those and what it means for us?
Yeah, let me just get a pen and paper and then because I do think a lot of these worlds intersect, overlap, and
Yeah.
in some, I guess, subsections of the industry, they are more or less the same thing. Or at least like nomenclature is used differently in different places. But I think ultimately you can think of the like creative conception as like a basis where songwriters are creating the underlying work. Or you can think of it kind of like in music publishing terms. You have your C and your P, you have your copyright and your publishing. And the underlying work or the copyright is generally created by songwriters. It's generally created by composers and producers. If you're just a producer or just that is your skill and you're not doing any necessarily writing, then you are focused on typically the publishing side, the master recording, or working with the artist to interpolate or extract their ideas into a song. But you're not necessarily writing it. Yes, you can get into co-writing credits and splits and things like that. That's all very common. But I think that's the largest differentiation is that at the fundamental, a songwriter or composer is creating this idea or the creative, the theme, the melody, the chords, and then the producer is the one turning it into a listenable sound recording that is then consumption ready for whoever the end user is, whether that's a client or a customer, consumer, listener, something like that. And I think with songwriter and composer these days too, once upon a time those were just roles, and then the producer was a part of it, but now it's kind of all one thing. Where the expectation is that yeah, you need to be producing your own music, you need to be mixing your own music, you need to be mastering your own music. So all of these roles that used to be like stratified onto different people and they were very hyper specialized focused people, now the music is more accessible both like in terms of learning about it, education, but also like accessibility of technology. You just become all of the things. And then the real stratification and the separation between composer and songwriter is intent. You're composing a piece of music versus writing a song. A lot of people argue that writing a song is composing a piece of music, and I would say, okay, like fine, that's cool if that's how you think about it. But I don't consider composing necessarily always songwriting. If you're writing a theme with or without melodies, like you could argue that that's songwriting. So I think these things intersect and overlap, but ultimately it's just intention. And that's why I kind of multi hyphenate a lot of the stuff that I talk about when I do, because I know there's different things mean to different people. And depending on where you at, where you from, what capacity you work in, if you're working with a creative director, you go, oh, I'm a composer. He's like, dang, I need a songwriter. Then it's like, oh, well, I do that too. He's like, well, you just said you're a composer. And or someone's like, well, I need like a producer, not a composer, so you can't work with me. I'm an artist. And I'm like, so I usually throw out all three because not only do I function independently as all three, but also I can function like, a little bit of a la carte, depending on what the gig calls for. Um, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. What do you agree with my statement? Or I mean, what do you think? I don't know. I'm not always right. I want, but
But you're here to give us all the answers. What do you mean?
no, I
No,
gotta go.
I definitely agree. I think the lines are blurred. And if we look outside of gaming, for example, like when you think of an EDM producer, that's someone who like composes, mixes, masters, like does everything. And so it means something else in EDM, for example, than it does kind of how you're describing it, which is I think comes from kind of historical terminology of like what a record producer, used to be before the democratization of, everyone being able to have a studio wherever on a laptop, right? If your laptop is powerful enough.
That's
So,
a good way to put it, the democratization of it. I think we it's a careful line between like commoditization,
mm,
democratization, accessibility, things like that. But
Hmm.
I think there is inherent trends between the two. But that, yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I didn't. That's a you do the words. Yes, you do. But that no, I totally agree.
But just to add on to what you said about, sometimes like having the need to like mix your own stuff or master your own stuff. Like I play in the Indian double A space, and I've never had budget to hire a mix engineer or a mastering engineer. And so, you have to get really good at that, but that takes a lot of reps. It's working over and over and over again in order
Yeah.
to get better, and being knocked down and getting back up and being like, how do I make this sound better? I don't know the terminology. Do I have someone else that I can talk to? Like, it's, as much as there is this accessibility, there's also kind of sometimes added responsibility as well, and then it's about working on one's craft.
That's totally cool. Whether it's, out of necessity or, your blind spots and you want to grow or something like that, totally cool. As long as you have your team, you have your people, and you're open to learning at least how it works, especially in like game development. It's so important, and films like this too. And I suppose like producing music generally in a collaborative environments like this, it's good for you to know enough to be dangerous
Mm,
on adjacent principles to what you're doing, or else you can't effectively communicate like
hmm.
how their role affects yours or vice versa. So I think, being educated enough to like ask about like, well, that chord's a little funky. Is that like a subdominant minor thing, or like what are we doing here that why does that stand out so much? Or, being dangerous enough to, when I say dangerous, it's just like, not actually dangerous, not harmful, but knowledgeable enough to be able to be helpful or articulate your vision to someone who knows what they're doing. Like, I'm not an orchestrator. I used to be an orchestrator. I orchestrated a lot when I first started my career. I have not orchestrated a piece of music in 10 years. Do I miss it? No. But I respect
Oh,
it.
interesting.
And I love when other people do it for me. But like, I'm not interested. Like, but I think
Yeah.
that goes to your point. The other thing too is listeners, consumers, the audience has been so spoiled and enabled because of this democratization of technology and accessibility of technology and music production skills that every piece of music that they hear on the radio, on their TV, on a YouTube ad is flawless sounding. And so that's the bar. You have to hit
Hmm.
that, I think, first if you want to speak to a consumer. And so many, people coming out of school or so many people entering the industry, they might be great writers, but if you're not a great producer, you already are looking up a mountain of people who have like maybe academically worse music than you. It's not as like, I don't know, well through composed, something like that, but it sounds amazing. And that's the first thing that a listener is going to grab onto. They're going to justify the music by how good or bad it sounds, um, both subjectively, but objectively to the standard of the industry. And if you can't get your music there, it doesn't really matter how good it is. If you can't get it at least to this like limit, the limit does not exist of some type of like music that is expected in the industry. So it's kind of this catch 22 almost, but yeah, I think that split between the songwriter, composer, producer, mixer, mastering engineer, at least we don't have to like cut our own vinyl or anything like that yet. But
Can you imagine?
um, I, as someone who runs their own record label, yes, I can
I was
imagine.
gonna say, actually, you probably
That
can.
would be nice. You just see me on the weekends, but I don't know. Yeah, it's all one blurry thing now. But
Mm,
I guess the full circle is I do that on purpose to just make sure I can speak, or the person who I'm speaking to, I don't like incidentally alienate them. So is it necessary? No, but it's just like a different way of communicating what it is that
mm,
I do to
mm-hmm,
different types of people.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I like what you said, and I want to maybe pull on this thread of like composition being different than production, because you can hear a song that is composed beautifully,
Yeah.
and maybe it's just a composition that's emotional and complex, and maybe it's all done in piano MIDI,
Yeah.
right? But the person doesn't know how
Yeah.
to orchestrate it or how to make it into something else. And that to me is the production aspect of like you're
Yeah.
taking a composition that's already written and you're now turning it into, I don't know, something that's orchestrated,
Yeah.
right? Like bridging that gap is really important because you could have a composition that is really beautiful, that's amazing, but that doesn't meet whatever listening requirement you're aiming for. And so I think the production skills are so important to be able to bridge that gap. But on top of that, I think something that's really important as we work on a game is kind of be I think we've already established that like your craft being at a certain level is table stakes, right? Like you have to be able to do the job,
Yeah.
whether it's, composing, producing, whatever you're brought on to do in a project. But then there's also balancing the game and balancing, is this going to fit and is it going to benefit the player experience? And is the person that we're reporting to going to be aligned with what we're bringing forward? So um, could you talk a little bit about kind of how you balance that? How do you balance like bringing in your own artistry
Yeah.
into a project while also being mindful of what's needed for the project and ultimately for the experience?
Yeah. Every project's going to be different. And there's like a number of different things that I think about. And I've talked about this a little bit in some of my recent presentations at DevCom or GDC, that is balancing. I use a number of different, like, I don't know, I suppose it's like philosophical tools, or psychological things too. It's like I use Pareto's principle a lot, which is 20% of your efforts is 80% of your results.
Mm-hmm.
I also use Parkinson's law, which is like a task or an object will fit the time or space that you allot it.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think about like the diminishing returns of both of those things as well, in terms of there's the needs of the project and what that like minimum viable project, in terms of like I've been thinking about it in terms of authenticity because I work with like a lot of world music in the last few years. So I think of like minimum viable authenticity, or what I call an MVA. But within all of those things, you're thinking about like you're talking about like there's a specific stakeholder that I'm talking to, and their idea of what I need to do is here. I want to go over here, maybe explore this. How do I maybe sneak in like my creative agenda if it feels appropriate into this project? Is there space for me to do that? Has it been communicated to me to like not do that? It's difficult. And every project's a little bit different. If you look at something, just using my own experience and reference, um, like Resident Evil 2, for example, just got called up and they're like, let's just do a grunge song. Just write a grunge song. I'm like, what is it about? And they're like, this thing, like the pain of remembering, this idea of looking back on your life and remembering what it felt like to look forward to the future. And like the director just gave us a one sheet of all of these things, basically what he felt like when he was playing the original Resident Evil, and now he's like making Resident Evil 2, looking back on how he felt about like the future in his life and all these things. Anyways, the point is it was just like a creative brief, and there's like so much there to like put ourselves into. And we're like, do you have any lyric requirements? They're like, no, just take this and write a song. I was like, fantastic. But then you look at something maybe a little more prescriptive, like Trek to Yomi is a good example, where it's like the world of the living in this game has to be Edo period music. Like you cannot fuck around. You have to just do that, or else like the chronistic like immersion of that is just totally derailed, and it could be very disrespectful. It's like, okay, then obviously that's not the place. But on the back half of that game, we're in like this fantastical afterlife, can do other creative things. So that's where I put it in that space. Star Wars is another good example. We're somewhere in between, where there's like a rich history of all these worlds. There's also new worlds, but they acknowledge like the galaxy is infinitely large almost. So let's explore what new music might sound. It doesn't not need to sound like Mos Eisley Cantina. Sure, we had a couple of little references in there because we went there in the game, but it had space to explore new ground. And I spent a lot of time exploring that and communicating with them, about exploring that space. So every project is just a little bit different, and understanding like, oh, I don't think I can get very far with this one stakeholder in terms of inserting my creative ideas. Like they don't necessarily value that. which is fine. Like my job is to not do that. If I get to do that, I should say our job, anyone listening, um, our job is to actualize someone else's vision. And if we can sort of either incept creative ideas or lead them to creative ideas that we think are interesting and novel that they then adopt, um, win-win. I think it's the typical hero's journey. There's a book that I love called Building a Story Brand, and it's Donald Miller wrote that book, and it really resonated with me because this is kind of the point of that, which is you, us, you, whoever, we're not Luke Skywalker. The Luke Skywalker, the story is the developer, the audio director, whoever hired us, we are Yoda. Yoda does not defeat
Mm,
the big bad in the end. Yoda does not project things onto Luke. He offers Luke the tools for Luke to then go do the thing he needs to do because it's his story. And so I think about that a lot when I'm communicating with people. If I find resistance or they're really set on their musical ideas, it's like, well, maybe if I just open up the field of view of what is possible, they might adopt that. And so I spend a lot of time explaining my ideas. If I do like a demo, I will do a write up. I'll make a deck with like images to
mm,
associate other forms of creativity with what I'm doing to help. It's kind of like selling it. It's kind of like continuing negotiation once you're already in the development process rather than here's an audio file and you just expect them to speak a language they don't know. That's why they
mm-hmm,
hired you. If they could
mm-hmm,
speak that language, they wouldn't have hired you. So like
mm-hmm.
use the tools to your advantage to communicate with like multidisciplinary creative to help do all that stuff we just talked about. Um, I don't know. I feel like I didn't answer your question.
I no, I'm 100% on the same page as you, and I just want to say a couple things before I elaborate on that. For anyone who hasn't listened to the music that you wrote for Resi 2, it's like so beautiful. Please go listen to it. Um, but also like to your point about collaboration, we're not brought in to make music in a vacuum and then just send final audio files. And a lot of the sentiment, I don't know if you see this online, but a lot of the sentiment that I see on social media from people who want to become game composers is I want to write music, but I don't want to get feedback on my music. And it's like feedback is kind of the whole job, actually. I feel it's
Yeah,
like about 50% of the job
yeah,
is making sure that we're exactly as you said, we're bringing that vision to life. And so I love iterating. I love when someone wants to engage with the music and
yeah,
we can sit down and we can talk about it and we can talk about, why my demo sounds a particular way and whether that works and whether it doesn't. And we can kind of course correct, right? Because ultimately, like we're there to help bring that vision to life and make sure that the music makes sense for what the player is going to experience ultimately,
yeah.
right? Whoever we're reporting to is in a sense representing the player experience
And they
in
know
that
best.
regard.
They know
Yeah,
best.
absolutely. Yeah, like I'm typically I'm brought in, I see like a sliver of development compared to the person that I'm reporting to, right? It's like collaboration is such a huge part of the role. Like if we look at some of the stuff you did for Star Wars Outlaws, right? Like I haven't listened to the whole soundtrack because I want to play the game, but the Nebula Calls is my favorite song that I did listen to.
I'm gonna be honest. You got to
But
sing it to me because we named them after I was done. So like I know it as like Miragana 4.
but like when you look at the credits for that song, there were
Yeah.
so many performers involved. Like it
Yeah.
is absolutely a collaboration. So could you talk a little bit about like what does an ideal collaborative environment look like for you? Because like
Cool. Yeah.
we're never working in a vacuum unless we're working on our own independent projects, which
Yeah.
that is obviously like, very rewarding to work on, but it's equally as rewarding to write for media. So
Yeah. And I mean, to be honest, when I do a demo and they're like, "Great, thanks," and it's done, it's a V1, it's done. I'm not mad. I'm stoked. Like,
also fair.
yeah, I'm just like, whew, I'm done. Like, sometimes we do the psychological trick, which is you either overdo it or you
Mm,
underbake it just slightly, so the person receiving it has like a little bit of agency to like encourage you to push it in one direction. I think that's like a really delicate space to be exploring if you
mm,
don't totally understand who it is you're working with. But once you have like a regular like I guess creative language you're speaking with someone, then you understand them, then you can kind of explore that space a little bit. But yeah, I love getting a V1 approved. Fantastic. it's great. I mean, it happened on Star Wars a couple of times, which is the first, I'd say 10 tracks, maybe more, maybe 10, 12 songs that I did for Star Wars. It was very iterative, going back and forth with music supervisor and then the audio director, then, up the chain at Ubisoft, then up the chain at Lucasfilm and Disney, and then all the way back down and all the way back
Mm,
up. And um, then we got to a point where Disney was like, we just trust Cody, just do your thing. And so they would give me some ideas,
that's awesome.
or I would just like, I would put together like a brief for a planet or something and send it to them. And they're like, great, do that. And the last few tracks I did, maybe everyone was just burnt out. The ones, which was great, which is
That's
kind of,
awesome.
yeah, it was terrifying. I was like, they don't care about me anymore. Um, but no, they were just like, no, you're doing exactly what we talked about doing, and there's no reason for us to be inserting our ideas here because this is what we talked about, which is great. But I think which is like a good encouragement to just communicate.
Hmm.
Crazy, like
Hmm.
communicate up front.
What a concept.
Crazy. I spent so much time up front talking and thinking and planning before I even start writing. And
Hmm.
I know other people are like, just start, just get in there. And I'm like,
I'm the same.
I really take my time. And then I want to make sure that like we're all on the same page. And then you can explore outside of that. But I don't know. I find that I thrive understanding that I'm on the same page with someone before I get in. Um, and okay, but that's not even what you asked about. So
No, no, no,
collaboration.
but just
Oh
to
yeah,
add to that,
yeah,
like I do the exact same thing.
yeah,
I host like a listening session and we just sit and I'm like, bring your music references, bring music
yeah,
that you love that you think would really fit the
yeah.
game. And we sit and we listen to a bunch of music and I'm in the corner writing notes. And then at the end, I'm like, here's what I got out of all of that. And it was like, okay, cool. And that kind of forms a North Star, which can change. Like maybe we try whatever comes out of that session and it changes and that's fine. But at least we come out of that being like, we want this. And also we really don't want this. Like I'm working on a game right now where it's like we really don't want any electric guitar at all. I'm like, okay, cool.
Let me. I
All
should
right.
have put it away. Should have just like.
Hide all your guitars. But it makes sense. It makes sense for the game, right? And like had I
Yeah,
not known that, like I saved myself time, I saved everyone else frustration, right? Like
yeah.
it's just nice. But anyway, sorry.
That's a good example
Collaboration.
too. Someone could be like, no guitars, and then you find out later it's a ukulele. They're like,
Yeah.
why isn't there this in there? I'm like, they're like, you put this instrument in. They send you like, a song, and I'm like, that's a guitar. They're like, no, 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 this is a guitar. And I'm like, oh God, that's a ukulele this whole time. So like, I think like communicating without words
Yeah.
is actually so much more valuable than trying to communicate about music with someone who doesn't have
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
vocabulary. So like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, listening parties are a great way of doing that. I don't even ask about music. I just say like, what are you feeling?
Mm.
What I don't know. Like substances come to mind. Is this like woody? Is this,
Mm.
a rounded sound? Do you want it to feel warm? What does warm mean to you? What describe a moment you felt warm? And then I can kind of like the skill I've developed is like especially working with like clients from different territories internationally. Not only are you like not speaking the same literal language, but they're not musicians necessarily, and they're trying to communicate to you in like a different creative language, in a literal different language that I definitely don't speak, but maybe they speak English as their second, third, or fourth language. So not talking about music turns out to be the best thing that I do
Mm.
normally. I'm not telling you what to do with your life or how to do your job, but I find that that makes the collaborative process and like making music for/with somebody so much more rewarding when it's not about the music.
Mm.
Because music is the easy part. The hard part is understanding why there's music or what
Mm.
you're trying to do or say with the music because we can misinterpret that very, very, very easily.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. And anchoring on emotion, I think to your point, is also really important, right? Because like someone can say, oh, this needs to feel sad, but we can like sadness means a lot of things.
Yeah.
And you can really open that up and you can have a whole hour-long conversation about that.
Well, I mean, that's what
Um,
the wheel is for, right? Like the
yeah,
emotion
that's
wheel.
it.
I don't
Yeah,
know if
that's
you look
it.
at
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
reference this sometimes, outside of therapy. And, I'm like looking at it and like I think about this because I will get a brief that comes in And yeah, it'll be like auto translated to English,
Mm.
and it's very obvious that either the client's using simplified language because they know it's going to be auto translated, or they don't know how necessarily to communicate about music. And so it's like very sad with triumphant, horns. And I'm like, okay, like let me look at this emotion thing a little bit and like where do those two things intersect? And you just go from there. You just figure it out. You put the
Mm.
pieces together and then just slow down. I just recommend everyone just slow down.
Mm.
Uh, because then the writing will be much faster later.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Because you'll know
Yep.
what tools you can't use. I find that if I'm writing for myself, which I have not done in a long time, but I also find that like writing video game music is writing for myself, so I don't
Mm.
really feel weird about it. Maybe I'm not an artiste, who knows?
You just
I,
admitted that you are.
um, but anyways, I find that like infinite tools, I'm not creative at all. But like once I'm in a tiny little box,
Mm.
I'm just like, oh, I get to explore what I can in this space. Um, that's when I find like near infinite permutations of creativity. I think like something like Star Wars was great because it was like the limitations were so not abstract but unique comparatively to other things where they're like,
Mm.
it's like we have the Star Wars timeline, we have our timeline, they intersect here, but also we're off in this world and this is what they have and this is how things have developed, but there's no musical genres, but there kind of is. Just go. And I was like, okay. So let me explore this in like a different dimension. So instead of thinking about like musical creativity, I was thinking, well, like what no one's ever talked about recording technology in Star Wars or like
Mm.
where these outlaw bands would find it. So I was just trying to, in those communication in the conversations and communicating about creativity and what they were thinking about. I was like, well, there's a whole dimension here of making music that has not been explored. So like, what if we go down that hole? And they're like, that's cool. And so like that's what I focused on. Like the music was music, just and then it was like, well, how do we record that? How do we make that
Mm.
sound like something unique from these worlds? So
Mm.
Bob's your uncle.
Hell yeah. No, I think that makes sense. Going back to collaboration, what's your ideal? Because you've worked with so many, especially like again, when I look at the Star Wars credits, like there's a lot of performers that were involved and just people
Yeah.
that you worked with. What does a really good collaboration look like to you? And I think we've already kind of started talking about it, that it's like just a lot of open communication.
Yeah, I want to have a party. Um, it reminds me a lot of when I was in a band or working with a group of
Mm.
people. Not like the parts where everyone's fighting over like, which minor seven chord voicing you should use. I'm like, doesn't even matter. It's going to be distorted anyways. Um, but it's like, and I think Star Wars really brought that together. But I've kind of continued that sentiment throughout my career. On Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, my first game project, there was just a group of producers. A group of us were just making these like remix bangers, and it was super fun, and it felt like a family. And we are just like, we don't know if this is gonna do anything. It's just like a gig that came through the studio, and we were like ready to move on to the next like TV show or something. And then like Devil May Cry came through, and we got to work with Suicide Silence and Michael Barr from Volumes. And we made these songs, and we were like, in the studio, and there's a big crew, and it always just felt, it has always felt like the creation process not only is like a party, but it's like I don't know, like a reality TV show or something. It's always been so fun, and I don't know
Mm.
if that's just like my proclivity of like how I like to work and bring people in and give people opportunities and like offer, whether it's like just trying. My whole thing really is like open doors and let people walk through
Mm.
them. And so I think when people choose to walk through those doors and elect to collaborate, it turns into like greater art. And Star Wars was really the culmination of that, where it's like I have my team at Imperia, and there's a lot of music in not a short amount of time, but not too long. But it was so strange and non-typical, and we're like kind of inventing these things on the
Mm.
fly, inventing like rules for how music might be recorded in this universe, and designing instruments that could come from natural resources on these planets, and like all of this thing, like creativity in a real multidimensional sense. It just took a lot of people. And then when we went to record it, sitting in these recording sessions, I'm like, where did all these people come from? Did I do this? Like, and every song, every recording session, it was it wasn't a literal party, but it was. Like we spent more time laughing and like, trolling each other than we did recording. And I got to be able to bring in like my friends and colleagues from different eras of my life, get them in the same room and like see that, like the joy of that, and
Mm,
hear their skills like marry together in real time on those songs. And so those songs like mean a lot to me because I can hear like different eras of my life coming through all at the same time,
mm,
which is really great. And I like to think like when you listen to those songs, if you just thinking like, oh, this was a party. They had a lot of fun while they were doing this.
mm,
100% the goal. Because I think that is what we're trying to channel for the game anyways, is like this sense of like party and funness. So when you're in these cantinas, it or even just driving around the world and you hear like a boombox or something, it's the sense of immersion feels appropriate. And
mm,
I think you can hear when music is created in isolation or in a vacuum, like you were
mm,
talking about, and it's kind of hard to relate to that unless emotionally you are in a vacuum or a sad place, and you go put on Blood Bank by Bon Iver and you sob for a few hours on repeat. Best EP of all time. But yeah, there's something about that I love doing. So that creative process, and I think, like, sure, I've got good creative ideas. You've got good creative ideas. But if anyone's ever been in a band, or this is the reason why we're in like media music, is the marriage of art forms is like
mm,
an exponential thing where the product at the end of the day is exponentially better when we work on it together.
mm,
And I know that like egos and expectations and other things get in the way sometimes when a lot of parties in the room. This goes back to like my producer days working with artists
mm,
and people feeling like very attached to their music or a sense of ownership, things like that. But so that it doesn't come for free. You're
mm,
definitely swimming in those types of waters when you turn music or creativity into a much larger collaborative space. Hence, game development studios are quite big
mm,
too.
mhm.
But yeah, just make it a party, have a good time. That's what I do.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, great.
I have a follow-up question. We spoke about this a couple weeks ago, and I loved your answer, so I want to ask you again.
Oh, I'm gonna mess it
How?
up. We should have
No, you're
recorded
not.
then.
No, you're
Oh
not.
no.
No, you're not, because we were so on the same page.
Yeah.
How do you get into your flow when you start writing?
It's just always going.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's a faucet. There is no, and I think maybe going back to the original question, we're talking about producers and songwriters and composers. Let's just throw in a fourth quadrant and say artist. I
Mhm.
think with producers, composers, and songwriters, unless you are like, sort of academic concert composer or something, if you are a creative professional, it has to be a faucet. You have to sit down. You don't know how many hours a day you're going to get. I don't get a lot of hours to work on music each week because I run multiple companies now. I don't know. I think we've had this whole like yes man conversation as well about opportunity and stuff. But
Mm, mhm,
um, you just have to sit down and do the damn thing. And this is why you practice. This is why you teach
yeah.
or learn, teach yourself, constantly improve because when you do have a moment to sit down and do the work, you cannot stall. You cannot wait for the muse to descend from the sky and drink from the font of creativity. You just hit the ground running and you open the damn thing. You sit in the chair. Sitting in the chair is the hardest part. Once you do that, you're good to go.
Mm,
But you know when you know. I mean, for me, it's like if I'm working and I get like 40 minutes of solid writing and it's like good flow state, I'm like, I'm good for the day. I'm done. Because I can write a couple minutes of music in 40 minutes if I'm just solely focused.
mm,
And I think that's kind of the key too, is finding balance. So if you turn it into a faucet, it's an on and off switch, and you turn it on when you need it and you turn it on off when you don't. You can't wait because I think that's opportunity cost
mm,
as well.
mhm.
Um, What
Yep.
about you? I don't know. I feel like
I
we did talk about this, and I
yeah.
are aligned. Are we just agreeing with each other the entire podcast?
I
Yes.
think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I
Yes.
mean, it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
No, but no, I think inspiration is a muscle
Yeah.
and a skill. And same thing as going to the gym, right? Like if you go to the gym consistently and you're lifting a consistent, weight, then yeah, great. You're like working towards lifting heavier and heavier and heavier. But then if you don't go to the gym for like a year, when you go back, you're not going to be able to do that. And for me, it's the same thing. I can write faster when I'm writing a lot of music.
Yeah.
Um, and I really do think that it's a muscle and it's a skill. Like the biggest compliments that I've ever gotten have been, you're very skilled, not you're very talented. You're very talented. Like talent to me doesn't really
Thanks.
mean anything because it's you practice. You
Yeah.
practice your craft. You have to practice your craft. You're practicing writing or you're practicing whatever instrument you're playing, or maybe you're learning a new instrument because you need to record something and you want it to sound authentic. And so you don't want to fiddle with the MIDI for 3 hours. You'd rather just record it with the instrument. So you're learning there. And I don't know. To me, like curiosity is so important because that's what drives me. Because it's like, oh, I learned this thing when I was mixing this song that I can then use, when
Yes.
I'm producing this other genre. And I don't know. To me, like all of it's exciting, right? So it's like you kind of I don't know. I feel like I have found where I want to be and need to be because I love it all. And so you're constantly working on it. But yeah, to me, it's a muscle. It's
It is. And you're coming about talent. I now I'm agreeing with you. Saying like so you're so talented is so diminutive of hard work.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and it is a muscle. I find that like if I'll take a break after a project or just like do other types of work after a long sprint on a project just to give myself a break. And when I come back, I'm exhausted. I write a minute music. I'm like, oh my God, I need a break. I gotta get out of here. But then that goes away. I think also like some point there's a deadline and you just have
Yeah.
to crunch and you like all of those concerns disappear and you're just solely focused on the thing to get it done and then you can have a crisis afterwards.
Yep.
But yeah, it is inspiration. I don't even think I'm inspired most of the time. Like
Mm,
I just love it. I mean, if I go for a walk or a hike, I like, or maybe there are moments in life that are inspiring. Like I took a trip to Japan last year, Niseko, to go
nice.
snowboarding, and I climbed
Nice.
Annapurna, which it overlooks Mount Yote. Ghost of Yote just came out,
Mm,
and I hiked to the top to do like some backcountry snowboarding, and I was just standing there, and it was like a perfect day, and like the wind was quick enough to just take the top layer of snow away from the very peak of the mountain. And I was like, oh, this is when you do like one of those meditation moments in a video game and you just sit there and you
mm,
just meditate and just like take it in. And I
yeah.
was just so inspired, not to make music, but to just live my life in like a very fulfilling way. And I felt like overwhelming gratitude that made me want to be creative.
Mm,
And so that stuff is fantastic, but you can't rely on inspiration. Like you don't know when those moments are going to come. You can manufacture them if you want. Like I can go climb a mountain tomorrow if I was desperate, but oh, there you go. And it's-
that's
I think
funny.
I can make it do some other stuff, but that's another time. So it like, I think inspiration, if we rely on it, I think it like not that it commoditizes it, but it kind of loses its I don't know, this sort of special nature
Mm,
of how like fleeting and beautiful it can be if we're just relying on it to do our job.
mm,
Because then it becomes transactional.
mhm,
And that part of the process of life, I think, shouldn't be transactional. That's my opinion.
mm.
Um, yeah, jazz.
For me, jazz. For me, staying inspired is staying present
Yeah,
to a huge degree and really appreciating the small moments, which is so fucking cliche, but it's also really true, like going out on a walk and going and getting a coffee made by someone who's a better barista than I'll ever be is like
true.
it's like a simple joy. And that to me is like if we want to call that like, yeah, you can bottle that up as inspiration, but similar to you, maybe faucet is a better word because I don't know, I'm constantly drawing on my life experiences and also like briefs that I have and you just empathize with whatever character you're writing a theme for or whatever environment they might find themselves in or whatever. Like I think empathy is also really, really important.
Yeah. And I think too, like people draw, they try and whether it's brute force inspiration or they wait as like a coping mechanism
Mm,
for self-doubt, imposter syndrome.
mm,
Like there's typically an underlying thing going on. Um, and I've been there too. I've felt that. It's not so much an issue for me these days because, like I said, it's time is such a delicate resource now that there's so much stuff going on. I'm not just writing music. For those listening that don't know, I've two record labels and a staff of people, and we're
mm-hmm,
doing sound design and music and songs. We've done 90 projects this year. Like we're doing a lot of stuff, which is awesome. Um, but if, I don't have the luxury anymore of feeling imposter syndrome.
mm,
I almost feel like if I let it take control, I will become it.
mm,
If I let myself feel imposter syndrome, I will be an imposter. If I don't overcome that urge, sit down at the fucking computer, pardon my language, I'm very passionate about this, and just like get in the chair, open the thing up. I have my tools. I know what I'm doing. I know which plugins I like. I know how to make them do the thing I want them to do. Just do it and you'll find your way. And if you don't have a great idea, just start somewhere. And any fragment of a sample will inspire you to do something else. If I don't know what I'm doing, I will literally just find a drum loop. I'll drop it in. I'll time stretch it. I'll throw a delay plugin on it. I'll
mm,
bounce it in place. I'll start chopping up. I'm like, oh, that reminds me of this other thing I remember that I really like. I'm just going to delete this. And that's the idea. So it's just like an example of, just do it. Just do the thing. You
mm-hmm,
don't need inspiration. You don't need
mm-hmm,
all of this stuff as an excuse to be creative. You are creative.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, I think like if I could give my younger self advice, we've got 10 minutes, so I do want to ask you a couple more
Oh,
questions, but
yeah. Well, we
I
can
don't
we
want to
can
get you out
we
on
can go
time.
over. I feel like we're just riffing and we're not
This is good. This is great.
doing any of the things you wanted to do.
No, no, no. This is even better. But I was gonna say, like, if I could give my younger self advice, it would be don't be afraid of the failure, the inevitable failure
Yeah,
that is ahead, and the
yeah,
inevitable failure that is still ahead.
yeah,
Like I've written some really bad music. I've also written some not so bad music. And everything that I've written, I've at least learned from. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
this like really doesn't work, and I really shouldn't do this again. But for the
yeah,
most part, you grab little pieces of wisdom from every single thing that you write, and it just makes you better. But in order to do that, to your point, you just have to sit down in the chair
yeah,
and be unafraid and just start playing. At the end
yeah,
of the day, like when it feels like you're just like playing around, that to me is, I don't know, flow state, right? Where it's like it feels fun, you lose track of time, and like maybe the person that I'm reporting to doesn't like my demo, and that's fine, but I had a really good time making it.
yeah. I think you can hear play. I think play is such an important part of this thing we're talking about of being a good collaborator, but also
Hmm.
loving what you're doing. On the flip side, though, too, if like you don't challenge yourself while you're playing, I mean, I think play inherently implies that you're exploring new places and
Hmm.
kind of playing in territory you're not normally swimming. But if you're not challenging yourself, that's when we hit like complacency, and that's when we hit like,
Hmm.
oh, I have the tools, I know how to do this, and you just use the
Hmm.
same tools over and over again.
Hmm.
That spirit of adventure doesn't really continue, and I think this is when a lot of people hit stagnant, or they find like a stasis or something in their careers, and they're not so much pushing forward or being as cutting edge or bleeding edge as they used to be. And I think that can happen too when you start to like take creativity and I guess turn into a job. It can take the fun out of it. And I think that
Hmm.
play and that fun, when it goes away, you can really hear it in the music, and that spirit of like joyful sandbox creativity, playfulness. I think if you keep that, that's
Mm-hmm.
inspiring. I don't know. There's your
Mm-hmm.
inspiration. There you go. Just
I
do that.
totally agree. And
Yeah.
I feel so lucky that that hasn't happened. Like, I still find a sense of joy and a sense of play and a sense of very deep gratitude
Yeah.
because I grew up in an environment where it was like creative career off the table. You're going
Yeah.
to fail time and time again and you'll never be able to do it. And I think as creatives, we have to build the muscle of resiliency on top of everything that we've been talking about. Like, we have to build resiliency and self-belief to a great degree that we can do it. And to me, the thing, to your point, that keeps me going is that sense of play, that sense of I love creating things that don't exist yet. And for me, the medium is music. And I love making sound effects too, like super fun. I love recording. I've done like vocal production. I really, really enjoy, working with artists as well. And like there's always this sense of play. And I feel really grateful that that's still there.
Yeah.
Because I agree. I think you can hear it.
You can. And I I specifically find myself in like cycles of like things are hard. You work on a lot of projects. I'm grateful, so grateful. But I have a lot of employees. I have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
contractors.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of expectation. Stakes can be really high. A lot of money is involved. Livelihoods, insurance, things like that. And it's that
Mm-hmm.
aspect, like those elements that can pull you away from the play. And like I've started meditating with my friend Thor Bremer. He's my meditation teacher, and just like that process has helped me get back to just like the fundamental thing
Mm-hmm.
that I love. That those things are not happening to me, but they're just happening, and that it shouldn't. It doesn't take away from the gratitude that I have and the love for music. But yes, some mornings you wake up and you get like, you see an email and you're like why did I do this to begin with? Like you start questioning things because you're asking like why does it need to be this hard?
Mm-hmm.
And that goes into like a whole other conversation about like expectation and
Mm-hmm.
communication and some of the things we talked about like entitlement. But I think as your net gets wider and wider, so too do you invite like opportunities for frustration that can eat away at that
Mm-hmm.
that very like joyful and almost like primal desire to explore creativity. And I use
Mm-hmm.
creativity very like blanket. Yes, for us it's
Yep.
music,
Yep.
but like it's also like video game development as a
Mm-hmm.
whole because that's where
Mm-hmm.
we're exploring through music. Um, but I try and think of it agnostic creativity as like this agnostic thing rather than just music.
Yeah, agreed.
But but yeah, so I don't know. I think when people stumble upon the day that they wake up and they're not just like totally stoked to sit at the computer, that's okay. It's a natural process of this whole thing. But sitting and finding gratitude to be able to do this is an important process of like not letting it get suffocated by those things.
Mm-hmm.
A lot easier said than done, and but but it's out there. But
Mm-hmm.
goddamn, it's fun to be making music
Yep.
and to be
Yep.
working in games. And what a blessing and what an
Yep.
awesome thing. So just like I don't know, don't lose sight of that.
Agreed.
Even though it's hard sometimes, but you can't lose sight about like why it is we're doing this to begin with. For me, it's to just
Mm-hmm.
like help people in the way that music helped me, to open doors
Yeah, same.
and to create abundance and value and opportunity and stuff like that. And if you like let you know, the weird and strange encroaching darkness like smother that, then I think we all lose out. And I think the world is like a more better and beautiful place if like that innate light and creativity inside all of us just like shines
Mm-hmm.
through. But we need to like take care of it. We need to nourish it.
Mm-hmm.
We need to
Yep.
respect it.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I meditate every morning. Like that really helps me a
Right.
lot. I try to move every morning as well. That helps me a lot. Just like start the day off right. But to your
Yeah.
point, like, I used to be I managed a team across multiple countries and like having people kind of report up to you, and that responsibility is also a lot, so I don't know exactly what you have gone through and are going through, but that is really challenging, really, really challenging.
Super challenging.
um
And, everyone who does talk to you, and I'm not saying that like starting a team or starting a company, we've talked a lot about collaboration. We've talked a lot
mhm,
about, the way I like to do things and like similar to maybe some of the ways you like to do things, but, not every shoe fits every foot.
mhm,
So that doesn't mean that is the standard, right? I don't want people to misunderstand
mhm,
that. Doing your own thing and just vibing and writing music, and that's cool too. But yeah, it can be challenging just because it's kind of like that saying with like a dog is like, and I hate to relate it like a person to a dog, but I like this analogy of like it as a pet owner or a pet parent. It's like across your whole lifetime, they are a part of your life, but you
mhm,
are their entire life. And so
mhm,
I think about that too when with my collaborators, where it's like I am just a fragment of their life. Or the work we're doing together is just a fragment. And I try to have a deeper understanding about like all these things. Same thing goes for like a client or an audio director or someone. It's like the genuine interest of like who is this person? What are the dynamics of what's going
mhm.
on? And like how do we effectively collaborate? And like you can't do those things unless you have a deeper understanding of who they are as a person.
Yeah.
And that can be very challenging. It's like you have a big team or a big network, a lot of people you're working with, collaborating with. The better you understand those people, the better your collaboration would be. But the more you understand them, the deeper you start to like empathize and to
Mhm.
like then like it just gets extra stressy. But it's all in the name of like, trying to treat people good and do the right thing and create spaces for people to feel safe,
Yeah.
collaborate.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we could really get into that. We don't have time though. Do you have time for two more
Yeah,
questions?
yeah, of course, of course. And
Two?
then we'll
Okay, I
do
don't
it. We'll do the last podcast of this year and the first one of next year,
do you
and
want
then
to come back?
second one of next year, and then the third one of next year. Uh,
All right, you're confirmed for January 2026. I mean,
yeah,
look, I have a recording. I'm just gonna send it to you and be
perfect.
like, remember when you
Uh,
said this?
no,
We
great.
should do it.
Super cut of every time I've slurped my beverages. Just keep a count. If it like
Yeah.
coffee count in this corner, water count
A
in
little
this.
counter.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be funny.
Um, okay, two questions. We can make them what do they call them on talk shows? Speed round? I don't
Yeah.
fucking know.
Okay.
Um, but two questions. I always end on the last one, and I really like the
Yeah.
insights that we get from it. But um, what do you think, but before we get to that last question, what do you think are the greatest determinants of success for
Ooh,
musicians and aspiring musicians in the games industry?
that's tough. I mean, everyone's always like, "Ooh, I want to be, you know, I want to score Avatar at 7, or something like that." And I think inherently we all start as artists and we end up somewhere else and we have lofty aspirations and I think success often gets inflated to these like markers that we hit, that we're trying to hit. And when we get there, shocker, likely still not happy. I mean, from my own personal experience, I'm very grateful that I was able to work on like some really cool stuff. In like right when I started my career in games. Like I had obviously a career before games, working on TV shows and which is great. Uh, but then getting into games, I kind of just started close to the top, which I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to kind of join there and I was prepared to do that. But then as time's gone on, you achieve those things and you get like, you know, your name on the Grammy ballot, which it is now for Star Wars, and you get like,
Congratulations.
yeah, thanks. Well, I don't
So
know.
cool.
We don't have a nomination right yet, but it's up there. That's cool. That's a
Yeah.
cool thing. Or I'm a member of the Recording Academy, or like I have all these albums I've put out. I've worked on this stuff and I've won awards. And like when I go to bed at night, I'm still thinking about the same things that I did 10 years ago when I didn't have this career. Um, and so it doesn't really change much. And I've taken stock this year of just like looking around at my stuff and remembering a time where I was like, oh, if the day comes that I buy an Axe Effects, I'll know I made it. Or like when the day comes when I have a Manly Vox box, I don't use it anymore. Like I'm just like I'm gonna sell it because like I don't know, I would rather buy a second set of skis because that gives my life
Mhm.
so much more joy than this, hunk of metal over here. So just I think that sort of stuff feels so important at the beginning. But then once you're there, and it's easy to say that because I'm there to some degree, is like I've experienced the idea of what I thought success was.
Mhm.
And now I'm like, I'm the person who told me when I was 18 that that's not success. And I was like, what do you know? Teacher at college, and like now that I've done all these things, I'm still trying to figure out what success looks like. But like I said, success looks like me at 11,000 feet skiing with my girlfriend and my best friends. Success looks like, going to a nice sushi restaurant once a year to celebrate being born. It looks like just having a space to be creative every single day and having people in my life that support me and value me and I know, have my back and, aren't attempting to like undermine or push me down or something like that. It's having those things is what success feels like. In a like and then in a space, like I said, to be creative
Mhm.
without judgment and to be creative without a degree of scarcity, which is inevitable in this industry. But yeah, I don't know. I think I think that's what success is supposed to look like. Totally object or subjective, objective. That's the point. It's not.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's
yeah.
totally subjective to everybody. But
Mhm.
I think your idea of success changes a lot, especially as you mature and like, your
Mm.
frontal lobe finishes developing and then you continue to live your life. But I'm sure in 10 years, success is going to look like a different thing. It reminds me of this like Matthew McConaughey quote that I really love, which is like, you need something to chase. And the thing to
Mhm.
chase is not another person on this planet. It's not an object you need to buy. It's not a house. It is it's the version of you 10 years from now. And I think
Mhm.
success is a moving target and success is the person who you're chasing, which is you in 10 years. And it'll always be 10 years ahead of you. You'll never become the person that is 10 years older than you, the version of yourself that's 10 years older, because they'll always be 10 years older. And the idea is like it's like a butterfly effect in real time, but you're looking 10 years into the future, that every moment of your life, that version of you is totally different based on the decisions you make now. So it also keeps you in check about like understanding interpersonal relationships and how to honor those and how decisions and the way you speak to people and how you navigate your career can affect, what success might look like to
Mhm.
yourself in 10 years. Um, but yeah, I
That's
think
a
that
beautiful answer.
that's kind of where I'm at with that one.
That's a beautiful answer. I've spoken to my therapist about the like future you thing a
Oh yeah.
lot, actually. Yeah. Of like,
Yeah.
he'll ask me like, what kind of decision would future you make? Or
Yeah.
what would you tell younger you
Yeah.
in this situation? And it's a very interesting exercise to do as like maybe a journaling prompt or to explore in therapy. It has been really interesting. All right. Last question before we wrap up. I always end on this one. It could be short response, long response, however you're feeling.
Yeah.
What advice would you give your younger self?
God.
It's a big question.
Ooh, so there's two two quotes that I've like, I mean, there's a ton. Oh my God, there's so many. Okay, now there's plenty of things coming to mind. There was one
You
when I was
collect
18,
quotes like I do.
but they're in my brain. But the first one would be uh, like one of my girlfriend's dads when I was a kid pulled me aside. I think he like heard us arguing or something, and he had this really low, deep voice, and he was like, Cody, don't let anybody steal your joy. And I was like, that's terrifying to hear from you. But like I've thought about that a lot more over the years. And it's like this whole dulling your shine or minimizing who you are for other people or because I think it's a disservice to who you are if you're changing like the core being of your person for someone else. Like they obviously don't, appreciate you or love you for who you are if that's what you're doing. So I think about that a lot, and I try to be like very unabashedly myself in all things. And then um, my business partner Jeff Rona, when I graduated college, he probably isn't gonna love me telling this story, but I
We can
love.
cut it.
No, leave it, leave it, leave it. Um, so I was the valedictorian of my graduating class at MI here,
Hell yeah.
because like five people graduated, so
Still, it doesn't matter.
easy to be on top when the mound's not that big.
You could have also not been, though.
But anyways, I at that time I hadn't had like media training, I hadn't done a lot of writing, and so I didn't know what to say in my speech. And so Jeff Rona wrote it. And at the end of the speech, and then I adapted it to, codify it. And at the end, it has something to say about like if no like when it comes to creativity and artistry and what you're doing, if nobody hates what you're doing, you're probably doing the wrong thing.
Mm.
And that resonated with me a lot. And I once posted that online when I got a lot of hate for a video game piece of music that I wrote, and then all of the fans were like, "Is this guy quoting himself?" And then they made fun of me for saying that. But then I was like, "Don't let anyone steal your joy. Don't. It's not that deep." And I go through all of these mantras all at the same time. But I think about that a lot. Not just like creativity, but
Yeah.
I think doing the right thing is hard. And if
Mm.
you consistently do the right thing, it's inevitable that you're gonna maybe piss someone off or step on some toes or step on crack a couple eggs, make an omelet type thing. But yeah, I think if people aren't upset with what you're doing, or if maybe like, sometimes people feel threatened, it's very broad,
Mm.
but you're probably doing the wrong thing. So something to think about because I think like fully dedicating yourself to something is actually quite polarizing, and people can feel
Mhm.
quite threatened by it.
I wish I could have told those things to younger me. I think I would have benefited from that wisdom 10,
I'm
10
sure
years ago,
you benefit from it now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
I would add maybe one for myself personally, and that's done is better than perfect.
And if you
You
don't
know?
release it,
Like
no one's ever going to hear it but you.
also true. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So yeah, better done than perfect.
yeah.
I don't have that issue because I'm just so self-depreciating. I'm like, it'll never be perfect. I should just put it out now.
I think that's a really good mindset though. Because nothing's perfect. Like it'll never be perfect, so it should just come out anyway. Like
Yeah,
you know, get it to a place where, as you said, right, 80/20.
that's right.
We could spend the next 80% of our time getting that last 20%,
Right.
and we're never even gonna get the last 20%,
Just double
right? Like
down 64-4. 4% of your efforts, 64% of your results. And you get right over that like 70% failing mark, you're good, turn it in, move on. On to the next one. Don't try it all. Just actually
yeah,
we
it's
should
fine.
stop trying. And I don't
And
know.
that's it. That's some life wisdom.
Yeah, that's true.
Cody, thank you so much. I've already kept you over time.
Thank
This
you for
was
having
awesome.
me. It was
It's
fun.
fucking awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we'll do it again sometime.
Hell yeah.
We should do it live at like a conference or something.
Yeah, down.
Yeah. I don't know. Whenever the next one is.